Hi, I'm Andy with EcoCha, and here we are with batch number 21 of the EcoCha Tea Club. And this month's batch that we have to share is a high mountain Concubine Oolong that was grown in the Shan Lin high mountain tea growing region in Nantou County. It was harvested last summer when it's becoming more and more of a common practice for oolong tea farmers to intentionally refrain from the use of any pesticides during the summer season specifically, with the intention of attracting a small flying insect called the green leafhopper. And the green leafhopper, which looks like a very, very tiny grasshopper, likes to feed on the sap of the very tender leaf buds that are the new growth of the tea plant in their early growing season. And the effect of this bug feeding on the sap and creating a tiny, tiny microscopic, not visible to the eye, wound on the leaf is an immune system response in the plant combined with an oxidation of the leaf, basically a scarring of the leaf that the plant has to heal from. This creates a very interesting flavor effect in the tea that's most commonly referred to as a honey fragrance or a honey essence. And it's a tricky business all around, starting with the completely uncontrollable and unpredictable effect of the insect coming and doing its magic during the right time of the growing season. It's said that the leaves ideally should be harvested after the bug has had a significant effect on the crop overall. In other words, you can observe the presence of the bug over a period of time and determine that it has done its thing. And the leaves should be harvested before the next rainfall. So after the bugs have done their magic, but before it rains, so that the chemical compounds in the leaf are not diluted by the plant absorbing a significant amount of water post this bug-bitten effect. So that alone is tricky. It has to be the ideal growing conditions, and the bug has to come at the right time. I mean, you can imagine it's a tiny flying insect. If you have acres of tea growing, there could be a concentration of the leafhopper over here, and over there they just haven't gotten there yet. So the overall batch of tea harvested on a given day is a mixture in itself. There's no uniform effect, no uniform bug-bitten effect on the leaves. So that's the first tricky aspect of cultivating and producing concubine tea, which is made from bug-bitten tea. Let me explain concubine. Concubine is a name that is following the example to an extent of Oriental Beauty. Oriental Beauty is also a bug-bitten tea. It comes from northern Taiwan. The tea plants are a different strain, and the processing methods are different. Concubine tea, basically the main thing that it has in common with Oriental Beauty is that the raw crop of tea leaves have been bug-bitten, or there's a significant effect made from the green leafhopper. Beyond that, concubine tea basically follows the tea processing methods of Dongding Oolong. So concubine is a name that was given to bug-bitten tea and is made by Dongding Oolong tea makers initially in the Lugu area of Nantou County, Taiwan. And now this type of tea, based on the bug-bitten effect and the processing, has expanded beyond Lugu to pretty much any oolong tea producing region. But the bug-bitten effect in itself has become a sought-after and relatively rare type of tea, since it's not really able to be controlled. You allow the crop of tea to grow naturally without any pesticide use, so that the bugs may or may not come and do their thing. And we've had lots of rain this year. A lot of consistent rain through June, and significant amounts, more than usual, and then a couple of typhoons following that. So nobody's planning on having bug-bitten tea this year, and this is definitely a contributing factor in my decision to source this batch of tea to share with our tea club members this month, is that concubine tea, along with any other form of bug-bitten tea, is very likely to be quite a rare commodity this year. So I was lucky enough to find a batch that was harvested last year, and some friends were continuing to roast a significant amount. They bought the whole crop and have continued to roast it batch by batch in about 20 kilogram quantities since last year. And they agreed to custom roast, so to speak, a batch of this tea for our tea club members. And I went to their house on the second day of the roasting. They did an extended roasting on the first day, starting at a very low temperature and increasing in 2 intervals for a total of 18 hours, I believe, was the first day of roasting. The second day ended up being about 12 hours at even higher temperatures, but still within the typical range. So I went and sat at their tea table and tasted the tea with them for the last hour and a half or so at about 20-minute intervals, and it was very easily detectable, the change that was going on. As you, in general, as you reach the final, the last segment of time in a long, slow tea roasting, the tea leaves are at their most volatile, and the roasting effect becomes much more evident much more quickly. Pretty much verging on a magic trick with this type of tea is bringing out the bug-bitten effect, but not losing it by over roasting. It's very tricky, very volatile. There's nothing to really tell the artisan when is the perfect time. Is 10 minutes going to do more for the tea, or is it going to totally take away that honey essence that is being sought after? So the final, the very last segment of time and the final step of producing this tea is also a crucial one. And we are lucky enough to be able to, I think he probably has less than 50 kilos of tea left unroasted. And we were able to source a part of that remainder of his last year's batch of concubine tea. Let's have a taste. You know, it's I can't help it. I'm very happy with the brew that I got, right, the first brew. This tea is also very fickle in its brewing. So if you underbrew it, it'll be fine. It won't be as good as it can be. If you overbrew it, it can get bitter and astringent more easily than other teas. Just another quirky aspect of bug-bitten tea, but it's all worth it. People just are very intrigued and almost charmed by this factor. And it's not only the fact that an insect created this particular flavor, it's a really special flavor profile. It's very full, very bold. It's fruity, and with the underlying base, you might say, of the bitter astringent quality that's inherent in tea. But the fruity and it's the floral character that you get from smelling fresh honey. Honey is also floral, but beyond any particular flower, there's just so much going on with honey. And it's really similar with this tea. So I would like to suggest that you really pay attention to the amount of leaves you use initially, at least, and the brewing times, because it's just a little more tricky to hit the mark with this type of tea. And that's my experience with Concubine for the last 10 or 15 years that it's been being produced and promoted. So that's the story behind Concubine. It continues to be a difficult thing to source with any consistency based on the natural circumstances that are required to make it. Of course, the fact that no pesticides are used alone is a sustainable plus, and it's a more naturally produced tea. And the farmers, prior to the popularization of bug-bitten tea, farmers were not really willing to do it because it's basically labor intensive. Number one, if the bugs have a significant effect on a given crop, the plants are needing a stage of recovery. Basically what that entails is they need to be pruned back significantly after they've been affected by the green leafhopper. Fair enough, their income is directly based on how much produce they can make, just like any other farmer. They have so much to sell, they make so much money. So they're a little bit unwilling to do these kind of quirky things like allow a particular bug to affect their tea plants so that they can work harder to create the next harvest. Yet, the power of product differentiation and the power of specialty tea has overridden those factors for many farmers, and they now take pride in having a batch of bug-bitten tea to offer. It just makes it interesting. Every batch of bug-bitten tea is unique in this sense, and I will also add that I've had the experience and have heard this from many friends, even each brew can vary, and it makes sense. The degree of the bug-bitten effect on each leaf is going to be different. So you might get a pot of tea that has a whole bunch of leaves that were very affected by the leafhopper, and the next pot maybe that goes down to 50% of the degree. So don't be surprised if you get different flavor experiences from different brews with this type of tea. It's fairly common, and if you think about it a little bit logically, it makes sense in that respect. It's all the same batch of tea, it's all been processed the same way, but the constituents in the leaves, based on the effect of the green leafhopper, vary. So there we have it, a relatively rare batch of high elevation, well, at least within the range of high mountain tea. This farm is about 1,300 meters. So the higher you go, the less likely you are going to find a batch of bug-bitten tea. It's more common in the middle elevation or even lower elevation regions. So this tea is from the Shan Lin high mountain tea growing region, harvested last summer and roasted by a roasting master, really. He enters competitions still consistently and wins high-ranking awards, and he has over 30 years experience of doing that. We met his son in a factory 5 years ago, and finally that friendship that has developed since then has resulted in sourcing this batch of tea, which that to me is very meaningful. I meet people and I see them once or twice a year sometimes, and 5 years later they mention a batch of tea and say, come try it, and all of a sudden I have the privilege of procuring and sharing a batch of tea that I find very special. I think this will also be something that you find special, and take your time with it, get to know it slowly. We think that it's going to expand your horizons of the Oolong experience. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next month.